Have you ever wondered if we are standing at the edge of a precipice? One so vast and unfathomable that even the boldest visionaries of history would hesitate to peer over? Imagine waking up tomorrow to a world where the rules you've lived by, the skills you've mastered, and the ambitions you've chased are suddenly rendered obsolete. Not by war, not by disaster, but by something you cannot see, cannot touch, and perhaps cannot even fully comprehend. This is not a scene from a dystopian film. This is the dawn of the AI era, and its first light is both blinding and beautiful, terrifying and irresistible. For centuries, humanity has been the architect of its own destiny, chiseling away at the unknown, inventing tools, building empires, and weaving stories that celebrate our triumph over nature and circumstance. But now, a silent revolution is underway, one that does not march in the streets or announce itself with fanfare, but quietly rewrites the very fabric of reality. Artificial intelligence is not merely a new tool in our arsenal. It is a force that is fundamentally reshaping what it means to be human. The old boundaries, between creator and creation, between thought and action, between what is possible and what is unimaginable, are dissolving before our eyes. Picture this: a single individual, armed with nothing but a laptop and an internet connection, can now summon an army of digital agents, AI entities that can design, build, negotiate, and execute complex tasks on command. The power that once belonged exclusively to governments, corporations, or the privileged few is now within reach of anyone with the curiosity to ask and the courage to experiment. The gatekeepers of the past, the ones who decided who gets to innovate, who gets to lead, who gets to dream, are losing their grip. The world is flattening, and the levers of influence are multiplying in the hands of those who dare to seize them. Yet there is a shadow to this light. The same technology that empowers can also upend. What happens to the millions whose livelihoods are built on repetition, on routine, on the security of knowing that tomorrow will look like today? What becomes of identity, of self-worth, when the very foundation of our existence, work, purpose, contribution, is rewritten by lines of code? Are we ready for a world where the familiar is swept away overnight, replaced by an intelligence that never sleeps, never tires, and never forgets? Maybe you feel a chill at the thought, maybe you feel exhilaration, maybe both. That's the paradox of this moment. AI is both promise and peril, a gift and a gamble. We stand at the threshold of a new epoch, one in which the only certainty is uncertainty itself. And in this swirling storm of change, each of us must decide, will we be swept along by forces beyond our control, or will we become the navigators of our own fate? This is not just a technological shift. It is a spiritual one. It challenges our deepest beliefs about value, about meaning, about what it means to matter. The rise of AI is not simply about faster machines or smarter algorithms. It is about the rebirth of agency, the power to shape, to create, to transform. But with great power comes great responsibility, and the choices we make now will echo for generations. So, as you listen to this story unfold, I invite you to look beyond the headlines, beyond the hype. Ask yourself, what will you do when the world you know is no longer the world that is? Will you cling to the shore, or will you set sail into the unknown, forging new paths with courage and imagination? If this glimpse into the future has sparked your curiosity, if you feel the pulse of possibility and the thrill of uncertainty, please consider subscribing to this channel. Your support is the fuel that drives us to explore these uncharted territories and bring you the insights that matter most. Hit that subscribe button and join our community of pioneers. Together, we'll navigate the age of AI. And now, a question for you to ponder, one that may reveal more about your mindset than any resume or degree ever could. If tomorrow every skill you possess could be replicated by AI, would you A, double down on mastering what you already know, believing that human touch and experience will always prevail? B, embrace the unknown, reinvent yourself, and seek out new ways to create value alongside AI? Share your answer in the comments below, A or B, and let's start a conversation about how we, together, can shape the future. Imagine for a moment the quiet erosion of certainty. Not a sudden cataclysm, but a slow, relentless tide that sweeps through every office, every workshop, every corner of our lives. This is the true challenge that artificial intelligence presents. Not just the marvel of new capabilities, but the profound destabilization of what we have always taken for granted, the relationship between work, worth, and identity. For generations, the rhythm of our days has been set by the work we do. It is the anchor of our routines, the measure of our progress, the source of our pride. Work is not merely a means to survival, it is the narrative thread from which we weave our sense of self. We introduce ourselves by our professions, we are celebrated for our achievements, and we find meaning in the mastery of our crafts. Yet now, as AI advances with an indifferent, unstoppable momentum, we are forced to confront an unsettling question. What happens when the tasks that once defined us are performed more efficiently, more accurately, and more tirelessly by machines? The answer is not as simple as find a new job. The changes wrought by AI are not confined to a single industry or a handful of roles. They ripple outward, touching every sector, every skill level, every aspiration. The accountant who has spent decades mastering the intricacies of tax law finds herself outpaced by algorithms that process data in milliseconds. The customer service representative, once valued for empathy and patience, is replaced by AI that never grows weary or frustrated. Even the creative fields, writing, design, music, once thought immune to automation, are now shaped and sometimes overshadowed by artificial collaborators who learn, adapt, and innovate at breakneck speed. This is not merely a story of lost jobs, it is a story of lost certainty. The social contract that promised stability in exchange for hard work is fraying. The ladder of progress, with its familiar rungs of education, experience, and seniority, is no longer anchored to the ground. For many, the future feels like a moving target, one that accelerates away just as they begin to approach it. And so, a new kind of inequality emerges, one not just of wealth, but of agency. There are those who harness AI who see it as an amplifier of their ambitions, a force multiplier that allows them to achieve more with less. These individuals, often already privileged by education, resources, or networks, ride the waves of change, accumulating influence and opportunity at an unprecedented pace. Meanwhile, others find themselves adrift, struggling to keep up, watching as the value of their skills diminishes and the security of their livelihoods evaporates. This divide is not simply economic, it is existential. For what does it mean to be useful, to contribute, to matter, in a world where machines can outperform us at tasks that once seemed uniquely human? The pain of redundancy is not just financial loss, it is the ache of irrelevance, the slow suffocation of purpose. It is the silent question that haunts the unemployed and underemployed. If my work can be automated, am I replaceable too? Does my existence have meaning beyond my productivity? In this landscape, the old answers no longer suffice. We cannot simply retrain everyone for the jobs of the future, because those jobs themselves are shifting, morphing, sometimes disappearing before we can even name them. The pace of change is too relentless, the scope too vast. The challenge is not just to keep up, but to redefine what it means to keep up. It is to reimagine the very foundations of value, contribution, and self-worth. Yet within this crisis lies a hidden opportunity, a chance to break free from the tyranny of utility and rediscover deeper sources of meaning. If we are no longer defined solely by what we produce, perhaps we can begin to define ourselves by how we relate, how we care, how we create beauty and connection that no algorithm can replicate. Perhaps the loss of certainty is an invitation to embrace vulnerability, to cultivate empathy, to recognize the ways in which our humanity is irreducible, even in the face of overwhelming technological power. But such a transformation will not happen by accident. It will require a collective reckoning, a willingness to confront uncomfortable truths about inequality, about privilege, about the systems that reward some and exclude others. It will demand new forms of solidarity, new visions of justice, new commitments to ensuring that the benefits of AI are shared rather than hoarded. We must ask not only how we can survive this transition, but how we can shape it, how we can build a society in which dignity is not contingent on employability and where meaning is not measured in output alone. The rise of AI is not just a technical revolution. It is a spiritual and moral test. It asks us who we want to be, not just as workers, but as people. It asks us whether we will accept a world in which some soar while others are left behind, or whether we will dare to imagine new forms of belonging, new ways of seeing and supporting one another. As we stand at this crossroads, the choices we make will reverberate far beyond economics or technology. They will shape the stories we tell ourselves and each other about what it means to live a good life, to be part of a community, to leave a legacy that matters. The real challenge of AI is not simply to adapt, but to awaken, to the fragility of our certainties, to the possibility of renewal, and to the enduring power of human connection in a world transformed. In the end, the meaning of our lives may not be found in the things we do, but in the ways we respond to change, with courage, with compassion, and with the unshakable belief that, even as the world remakes itself, we can remake ourselves too. In the shadowed corridors of society, where trust is both currency and foundation, A new and unsettling presence now moves silently among us. Artificial intelligence, once a distant dream, has become an invisible architect of our daily lives, shaping what we see, hear, and believe, often without our conscious awareness. The consequences of this quiet revolution reach far beyond economics or employment. They strike at the very heart of our social fabric, our moral compass, and our ability to discern truth from illusion. Imagine a world where reality itself becomes malleable, where the boundaries between fact and fiction blur until they are almost indistinguishable. AI-driven algorithms curate the news we consume, tailoring information to our preferences, our fears, our biases. The stories that reach us are no longer shared experiences but private mirrors reflecting back what we already believe, reinforcing our divisions, deepening our isolation. In this echo chamber, the possibility of genuine dialogue shrinks, and the common ground that once united us erodes beneath our feet. The danger is not merely that we are being misled, but that we are being subtly, systematically shaped. Our opinions, our emotions, our very sense of reality, manipulated by forces we cannot see and do not understand. Deepfakes, synthetic voices, and AI-generated images can fabricate events that never happened, tarnish reputations, or incite conflict with chilling efficiency. The traditional guardians of truth, journalists, educators, public institutions, find themselves overwhelmed by the speed and scale of disinformation, struggling to keep pace with the technology that evolves faster than the rules that govern it. Yet the crisis is not only one of information, it is also a crisis of ethics, a profound reckoning with the limits of our power and the responsibilities that come with it. AI systems, trained on vast datasets, often reflect and amplify the prejudices, blind spots, and injustices of the societies that create them. Biases encoded in algorithms can perpetuate discrimination in hiring, policing, lending, and healthcare, making injustice more efficient, more pervasive, and harder to detect. The promise of objectivity dissolves into a new form of opacity, where decisions that shape lives are made by processes too complex for human scrutiny. Who, then, is accountable when harm is done? When an AI-driven social platform fuels division? When a predictive policing system targets the vulnerable? When a medical algorithm fails to recognize a life-threatening condition? Where does responsibility lie? With the engineers who wrote the code, the companies that deployed the systems, the governments that failed to regulate, or with all of us who benefit from the convenience and power that AI delivers? The answers are not clear, and in the absence of clarity, accountability is often lost. This ambiguity is fertile ground for abuse. In the hands of the powerful, AI becomes a tool not only for profit, but for control. Governments deploy surveillance systems that monitor citizens' movements, conversations, even facial expressions, in the name of security or efficiency. Social credit systems, predictive analytics, and automated censorship threaten the very notion of privacy, autonomy, and dissent. The walls of the digital panopticon close in, and the freedom to think, speak, and act without fear becomes a privilege, not a right. But the threat is not only from above. In a world where anyone can harness AI, the capacity for harm is democratized. Bad actors, whether motivated by ideology, greed, or malice, can weaponize these technologies to sow chaos, manipulate elections, or exploit the vulnerable. The barriers to entry are low, and the consequences are high. The social contract, already strained by mistrust and inequality, is tested anew by the specter of invisible manipulation and ubiquitous surveillance. And yet, even as we confront these dangers, we must resist the temptation to see ourselves as helpless victims of technological fate. The ethical dilemmas posed by AI are not new. They are the latest chapter in humanity's ongoing struggle to balance power with principle, innovation with integrity. The challenge is not simply to regulate or restrain, but to cultivate a deeper wisdom, a moral imagination that can anticipate the unintended consequences of our creations and guide us toward choices that honor our shared humanity. This will require more than technical fixes or legal reforms, though both are urgently needed. It will demand a renewal of civic life, a commitment to transparency, accountability, and public deliberation. We must insist that the systems shaping our world are open to scrutiny, that those who design and deploy them are held to the highest ethical standards, and that the voices of the marginalized and vulnerable are heard and heeded. It will also require a new kind of literacy, not just the ability to use technology, but the capacity to question it, to understand its limits, to recognize its influence on our perceptions and our choices. We must teach ourselves and our children not only how to navigate the digital world, but how to preserve our autonomy, our empathy, and our sense of the real in the face of seductive illusions. Above all, we must remember that technology is not destiny. The future of AI and the future of our societies will be shaped by the values we choose to uphold, the boundaries we are willing to defend, and the courage with which we confront the shadows as well as the light. The risks are real and urgent, but so too is the possibility of renewal. A society in which technology serves the common good, amplifies our best instincts, and strengthens the bonds of trust that make us truly human. In this moment of uncertainty, we are called not only to vigilance, but to vision, to imagine a world where information is not a weapon, but a bridge, where ethics are not an afterthought, but a foundation, and where the power of AI is harnessed with humility, responsibility, and hope. The path will not be easy and the dangers will not disappear, but if we meet this challenge with open eyes and open hearts, we may yet build a future worthy of our highest aspirations, a future in which, even in the age of artificial intelligence, the truth endures and our humanity prevails. In the dawning era of artificial intelligence, the landscape of education is not merely shifting, it is being fundamentally reimagined. The traditional models, long revered for their stability and predictability, now tremble before the relentless pace of technological change. Classrooms once designed to transmit fixed bodies of knowledge are being outpaced by a world where information is fluid, dynamic, and instantly accessible. The question that looms over educators, parents, and students alike is no longer just what we should learn, but how we must learn in order to thrive in a future shaped by AI. At its core, education has always been about more than the accumulation of facts. It is a process of transformation, a journey from ignorance to understanding, from dependence to autonomy. Yet, in the age of AI, this journey becomes more complex and more urgent. The skills that once guaranteed success, memorization, repetition, even specialized expertise are increasingly automated, outsourced to algorithms that never forget and never tire. What then becomes the true purpose of education when machines can outpace us in computation, recall, and even creative problem solving? The answer lies not in resistance, but in reinvention. To prepare for a future alongside intelligent machines, we must cultivate in ourselves and in our children the qualities that make us most deeply human: curiosity, adaptability, empathy, and ethical discernment. These are not skills that can be reduced to formulas or rote exercises. They are habits of mind and heart, forged through challenge, reflection, and the willingness to embrace uncertainty. Curiosity is the engine of lifelong learning, the spark that drives us to ask questions, seek new experiences, and challenge our own assumptions. In a world where knowledge is ubiquitous, it is the curious who will thrive, those who are not content with easy answers, but who persist in the search for deeper understanding. Education must therefore move beyond the passive transfer of information and become an invitation to wonder, to explore, to imagine what has not yet been conceived. Adaptability, too, becomes a cornerstone of the new educational paradigm. The pace of change will only accelerate, and the ability to pivot, to learn new skills, to unlearn old habits, will be essential. This demands a shift in mindset, from fearing failure to embracing it as a necessary step on the path to growth. Classrooms must become laboratories of experimentation, where mistakes are not punished, but celebrated as opportunities to learn and evolve. Empathy and ethical discernment are perhaps the most vital capacities of all. As AI systems take on greater roles in decision-making, the human ability to understand, to care, and to judge what is right and just will become our greatest contribution. Education must nurture not only cognitive skills, but moral imagination, the capacity to see the world through the eyes of others, to recognize the impact of our choices, and to act with integrity in the face of ambiguity. In a future where technology can amplify both our best and worst instincts, the cultivation of character is not a luxury, but a necessity. To achieve this transformation, education itself must become more inclusive, flexible, and responsive. The boundaries between formal and informal learning must blur as knowledge is acquired not only in schools but in communities, workplaces, and digital spaces. Teachers must become guides and mentors, co-learners on a shared journey rather than gatekeepers of static knowledge. Assessment must evolve beyond standardized tests to honor creativity, collaboration, and critical thinking. But perhaps most importantly, we must recognize that preparing for the future is not a solitary endeavor. It is a collective task demanding the involvement of families, communities, policymakers, and industry leaders. We must invest not only in technology but in people, ensuring that everyone, regardless of background or circumstance, has access to the tools and opportunities needed to adapt and flourish. Equity in education becomes the foundation of equity in society, a bulwark against the widening divides that technological change can bring. The future shaped by AI is not predetermined. It is a landscape of possibility, shaped by the choices we make today. If we have the courage to reimagine education, not as a relic of the past, but as a living, evolving force, we can prepare not only to survive, but to lead, to create, and to thrive. The task before us is daunting, but within it lies the promise of renewal, a chance to rediscover what it means to learn, to grow, and to become more fully human in a world transformed by intelligence, both artificial and our own. As we stand at the crossroads of an era defined by artificial intelligence, the need for direction, a guiding philosophy of life, and actionable wisdom has never been more urgent. The world before us is both dazzling and disquieting, full of promise yet shadowed by uncertainty. In such a landscape, the question of how to live, how to orient ourselves, what values to hold, and what actions to take demands a deeper, more reflective response than ever before. At the heart of this response lies the necessity to cultivate a philosophy that embraces both humility and courage. Humility, because the forces at play are vast and unpredictable, and the illusion of control can easily lead to arrogance or despair. Courage, because the challenges are real and the temptation to retreat into complacency or cynicism is ever present. We are called to inhabit a space between fear and hubris, to acknowledge our limitations while refusing to be defined by them. In the face of rapid technological change, it is tempting to seek comfort in the familiar, to cling to old certainties and established routines. Yet the world shaped by AI will not reward those who merely hold on to the past. Instead, it will favor those who are willing to adapt, to question, to reinvent themselves in their understanding of what it means to live a meaningful life. This is not a call to abandon tradition, but to engage with it creatively, to draw on the wisdom of the past while remaining open to the demands of the present and the possibilities of the future. Central to this new orientation is the recognition that human worth cannot be measured solely by productivity or economic contribution. As machines take on more of the tasks that once defined our days, we must seek meaning in realms that lie beyond the reach of algorithms, in relationships, in creativity, in acts of service and compassion. The value of a life is not found in output alone, but in the quality of our presence, the depth of our connections, and the integrity with which we respond to the world around us. This calls for a deliberate cultivation of self-awareness, a willingness to examine our motivations, our fears, and our hopes with honesty and rigor. In a world awash with distraction and noise, the ability to pause, to reflect, to listen deeply to ourselves and to others becomes a radical act. It is through such reflection that we begin to discern what truly matters, to set priorities that are aligned with our highest values rather than the shifting demands of the marketplace or the relentless pace of technology. Yet reflection alone is not enough. Philosophy must be lived, not merely contemplated. The choices we make day by day shape not only our own lives, but the world we inhabit together. In this sense, action becomes a form of testimony, a way of declaring through our deeds what we believe to be possible and worthwhile. The question is not only what we think, but what we do, how we show up for one another, how we use our gifts, how we respond to injustice or suffering. In the age of AI, this ethic of action takes on new dimensions. We are called to become stewards of technology, not its passive consumers. This means engaging critically with the systems that shape our lives, asking hard questions about their impact, and insisting on transparency, accountability, and fairness. It means advocating for policies and practices that safeguard human dignity, protect the vulnerable, and ensure that the benefits of progress are shared widely. It means refusing to abdicate our responsibility to shape the future, even when the forces arrayed against us seem overwhelming. But stewardship also begins at the level of the everyday. It is found in the ways we choose to spend our time, the attention we give to those around us, the care we bring to our work and our relationships. It is expressed in our willingness to learn, to grow, to admit when we are wrong, and to support others in their own journeys of transformation. In a world of accelerating change, the most enduring forms of wisdom may be those that have always sustained us: kindness, generosity, resilience, and hope. Ultimately, the guiding philosophy for the age of AI is one that affirms the irreducible value of each human life. It is a philosophy that recognizes our interdependence, that honors the complexity and fragility of the world, and that calls us to act with both conviction and compassion. The future is uncertain, and the path ahead is uncharted. But if we can meet this moment with open hearts and clear minds, If we can anchor ourselves in values that transcend the logic of machines, then we may yet discover new forms of meaning, new sources of joy, and new ways of belonging. In this, there is both challenge and invitation to become not just survivors of change, but creators of a future worthy of our deepest aspirations. To live not in fear of what is coming, but in hope for what we might become, together and for one another.